The MX Keys and the MX Keys Mini keyboards from Logitech are both excellent devices. I like them both for different reasons. However, there are some caveats and some differences that I think you ought to be aware of before you go out and buy one, because some of those differences might be deal breakers for you depending on what you're looking for in a keyboard. So let's dive in here and figure out which one might be a better fit for you, your preferences, and your workload. So one of the first things that you'll notice here between these two keyboards is the obvious size difference. So the larger version here, the MX Keys, does have that full-size number pad, which is nice for those who do lots of data entry, whether you're working with numbers frequently in Excel or spreadsheets, that sort of thing, or maybe you're just someone who types numbers all day, every day, and you do want that number pad. So if so, you're going to appreciate having that on the larger MX Keys keyboard. Now the MX Keys Mini does live up to its name and being a smaller keyboard because this does not have the number pad, as you can see. Now I personally like that fact because this is a keyboard that takes up less space on my desk, and it's more portable because of that fact. This is something that I can put into my backpack just easily, and it works great. It's very durable, and I like it very much. However, if you are someone who does want that number pad, then you're going to care that the MX Keys, the larger version, does have that, whereas the MX Keys Mini does not. So that's something to be aware of going forward. Now you'll note that on the smaller keyboard here, the MX Keys Mini, the arrow keys are smaller than they are on the larger MX Keys keyboard. Now the MX Keys Mini does have a keyboard layout here that's very similar to what you might find on many laptops today, whether that's on the Windows side or the Mac OS side. So if you are familiar with MacBooks, for example, these arrow keys are very much like what you would find on a MacBook Pro. So I'm looking at a 14-inch MacBook Pro to my right here, and the arrow keys are largely identical to that. So if you are someone who is comfortable typing on a laptop keyboard, then you will not mind this arrow key layout, I don't think. Now, if you do care about the arrow keys and you want the full size, then obviously the larger keyboard will be your better bet. On the larger keyboard here, of course, you can see that there are the full size delete and home and page up and page down and end buttons, which are nice to have for many people, especially if that's something that you've relied on in the past. Now, you'll note that on the smaller version of the keyboard, there are no dedicated buttons for many of those things, with the exception of delete here, of course, which is kind of a standard staple. But you can do many of these things with keyboard shortcuts on either of these keyboards. However, if you do want to have those full dedicated buttons, then the MX Keys, the full-size keyboard, will be the better option for you. Now, both of these keyboards, of course, do have function keys, which you can customize to an extent using the Logitech Options Plus software. Now, the larger version of the keyboard does, of course, have more buttons to customize because it is, again, a larger keyboard. And if that's something that matters to you, then definitely go with the larger version. However, the smaller version, in my opinion, has enough. And again, you can customize these using that software. But there's some things here that you might want to be aware of. For example, only on the larger version do you get a forward and back button. If you are someone who likes to listen to music, then you might want to have those on your keyboard because you can change which track you're listening to very, very easily with Spotify or Apple Music or whichever music program you want to use. You can do that very nicely from here on the larger version. The smaller version, of course, does have that pause and play button, which is a nice thing to have, but only on the larger version do you have the forward and back buttons, which I think is an odd omission in my personal opinion. But you'll note that on the smaller version, you do have a microphone mute button, which is a nice thing to have if you are in Zoom calls, that sort of thing frequently. And of course, you also do have an emojis button, which I suppose would be more for a mobile device like an iPhone or a tablet sort of a device, possibly Mac OS. But that is something that I think is strange, and I would prefer to have a forward and back button for media controls there over those things. But the good thing is that you can customize that to an extent using the software. So if there's a function key there that you would rather not have, or that you would rather replace with something else, you could likely do that with that software. So, which is pretty cool. Now, both of these keyboards can be connected to up to 3 different devices each. So you could have, for example, your laptop and your tablet and your phone all set up on this keyboard, and you can switch between them all seamlessly. So say, for example, you're working on your computer and you get a text message and you want to respond to that message quickly, you could switch over to that device, type out your message, and then switch back over to your computer, all very seamlessly and very quickly. So I love that functionality of both of these keyboards, and think it's nice to be able to switch between them very quickly. Now on the MX Keys Mini, those keys are on the top left, and on the larger version of the keyboard, those keys are on the top right, as you can see. So as far as the keyboard feel goes and how they feel to type on, I would say that they are both identical in every way. The key travel is the same on both of them. They're both very, very responsive, and I think that they have really perfected just how far a key should travel with these particular keyboards. Now, I know that some people will prefer more key travel than less, and some people will prefer less than more. But for me personally, I do like the MX Keys Mini the best. I have found that I like to type on these keyboards more than I like to type on my MacBook Pro or my Dell XPS, for example, because I feel like I can sit and type for hours on this thing if I'm working on a different type of keyboard, whether that's just a typical, $20 keyboard or $30 keyboard. After a while, my hands are going to get sore, but I don't really find that issue with these keyboards for whatever reason. It could be something wrong with me, which who knows, probably is. But let's be realistic here. But both of these keyboards, I think, are excellent options. Now, obviously, the Mini is going to be better for you if you want to travel with it. So if you want to put this in a backpack or a sleeve and take with you, then this is going to be your better option than the larger version, of course, because it would be kind of strange to travel with that larger desktop size keyboard. I mean, you could do it, sure, but realistically, I mean, probably not the best option. This will be a better option for you long term, I think. Or you can get both and travel with one and keep the other one at home, possibly, I suppose. But as far as price, the MX Keys Mini does come in at about $100, so about $99 depending on where you look. And the MX Keys larger version does come in at about $120. So there's a bit of a price difference. And if you do care about the price, then obviously the Mini is going to be the better option. But it is only a $20 difference US last time I checked anyway. So that's something that's not going to be a deal breaker for many people, but something to consider if you do care about that. Now, the only thing that I will say that I don't like about these keyboards is the fact that they are rechargeable. And you might think, well, Michael, why is that a problem? I mean, everything's rechargeable in 2023, right? Well, the problem here is that these keyboards do have sealed-in batteries, so you can get in here to replace this battery if you absolutely needed to. So maybe in 5-6 years when the battery does finally need to be replaced, you could potentially get in there and open this up with the right tools and the right willpower to do that. However, over time, batteries do degrade and they do, the chemicals inside break down and they become less reliable and less capable of holding a charge for a long time. So eventually these things will not be able to stay charged for as long as they could when they were new, which is normal for every cell phone or rechargeable camera or laptop battery. That's just normal and it's expected. So I would like to see the ability in a future version to replace the batteries without ungluing something, or even if Logitech were to sell a battery or tell us precisely which battery that we need to go purchase to replace our own batteries, that would be great, because these aren't the cheapest keyboards on the market. They're $100 and $120 keyboards, so that is a good chunk of change for many people. Now, could you replace it in a few years? Yeah, probably you could. I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world if you had to buy a new keyboard, but realistically, those of us who want to keep our devices around for a longer period of time will wish that we could replace those batteries easily. If Logitech is watching, in the 0.00001% chance that they are, I would like to see a new version of these keyboards with a replaceable battery by the users. That's something that I think more and more devices are going to, and I would like to see that happen here on these keyboards as well. However, both of these keyboards are fantastic in every way. I think they are excellent choices for home users, for content creators, for people who write frequently, for the office user, whatever your case might be. They're both great keyboards, and I think that whichever one you go for, you will be very happy. Now, if you like these kinds of videos where I'm just kind of going through differences between products and helping you decide which one might be a better fit for you, then please like this video and please hit that subscribe button. It would really help me a lot to grow this channel and to be able to produce more content about these kinds of things that hopefully will help people. One of the purposes that I created this channel is because I want to help people to make the wise purchasing decisions and to save money with their technology and to be happier long-term with what they buy. So if that's something that is interesting to you, then please hit that like button and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.